If I could sum up Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in one thesis sentence, it would be, take Green Hill Zone, extrapolate on that idea, abandon Marble and Labyrinth entirely, and roll with the punches. Every level, to a greater or lesser extent, has a much higher focus on speed. 10 seconds in Chemical Plant Zone, and it's fairly evident Sonic Team knew where they were going this time. More loops, more speed boosters, more inclines, more secrets, more pathways, no trace of pace-breaking level motifs. And when pace breakers are included, they're incorporated into the level design in unobtrusive ways. Except in Metropolis. My previous video was mostly covering the original game, with a brief overview of how the mobile port saved the experience for me. This time, to avoid repetition, I'd like to talk exclusively about the mobile port, much like I did with my 3D Zelda retrospective. There's not much point in repeating the structure of my previous video, as I did it to highlight my frustrations with the dated aspects of classic Sonic design. It would be repetitive of me to complain about the exact same dated elements of Sonic 2 and then bridge into how the mobile port saved the experience. Spoiler, the mobile port saved the experience. Sonic 2 Mobile has a save system, widescreen support, adds Knuckles as a playable character, gives Tails the ability to fly, finishes the initially scrapped Hidden Palace Zone as an entirely new level, improves performance, and renders the special stages in 3D. You can even restart the special stages, so if you know you didn't collect enough rings, you can instantly retry without worry. Forgiving as it might seem, Sonic 2 doesn't afford you a ton of easy opportunities to enter special stages, and since they're trial and error based, restarting them until you get it right seems like the optimal way to play. It also means that, unlike the original, I can actually see what Super Sonic feels like. Sonic 2 Mobile is the definitive Sonic 2 experience, that much is evident. Now we answer a more pressing question. How does Sonic 2 fare overall? Emerald Hill Zone is everything you could ask for out of a spiritual successor to Green Hill. Multiple pathways, even more secrets, and a tight focus on speed. There are more loops than there were in Green Hill, the acts are larger because they're condensed from 3 to 2, and there's a corkscrew set piece introduced for some added flair. Sonic 2's production values are a jump up from Sonic 1. I didn't feel it necessary to go into Sonic 1's visual design because it's generally pleasing and not much more. Sonic 2 has a brighter color palette and absolutely stunning background art. Sonic's character model has a few more frames of animation, jumping out more as a result. I particularly like the attention to detail paid to Sonic's spin dash animation, with a rev up, a cloud of dust behind him, and a wind up sound effect paired with a satisfying blast off. The spin dash is a fantastic new tool for Sonic to quickly gain momentum. In Sonic 1, attaining short-term speed was potentially awkward since it meant you needed to move back for lead time or jump in such a way that you gain enough speed to clear an incline. In Sonic 2, the spin dash solves this problem by letting Sonic store speed and then quickly release it to clear any obstacle in his path. It mixes very well with Emerald Hill's increased focus on momentum-based secret locations. With a spin dash, you can jump off of ramps or inclines at will to reach higher areas, allowing you to pick and choose where you explore. You're given a tool to organically weave in and out of the multiple pathways as the level permits, as long as you're skilled enough to get where you need to go. Emerald Hill has at least 2 pathways happening at any moment, with secret pathways around every corner. The beginning of the level is a great teaching tool, showing you a hidden pathway full of rings in plain sight no matter how fast you're running. It stands to reason there would be more hidden pathways just like that one. Lo and behold, there are tons more less obvious secret pathways laden throughout the entire game. Initially, secret pathways are at least shown to have goodies from the outside, gradually becoming more obscure as the game progresses. One of my favorite secret pathways is after a set of 2 loops, where you need enough speed to reach the secret area, but not too much speed as to hit the red bumper on the ceiling and fly back to the bottom. Emerald Hill is a great first level, not without a few monkey-related grievances, and accomplishes what Green Hill attempted in a more refined form factor. I love Emerald Hill Zone, yet it doesn't stick around for very long in my mind, not as much as Green Hill. It's not really the fault of the zone itself, it's a fun zone. It just has the displeasure of preceding Chemical Plant Zone. Let's look at a sprite map. Oh, well, fuck me, that's a big fucking zone. Chemical Plant is my go-to example of Sonic the Hedgehog's potential, whenever anyone inquires. And they don't, because why would they? This zone has a gigantic list of pathways and secrets, all of which can be switched between with the right speed and timing, and most of the set pieces focus on Sonic's acceleration. Segments where Sonic rockets off so fast you can't see him anymore thanks to the removal of his speed cap. It's a toxic playground of boosters, bumpers, long tubes, and hidden secrets. Instead of having 2 or 3 naturally developing pathways, Chemical Plant follows the same template with 4 or 5 different pathways, and just as many secrets for each path. Each act is about as long as Act 1 and 2 of Emerald Hill combined, so it lets Sonic rip through terrain at a much faster speed without the need to constantly halt his momentum with enemies or stage obstacles. When enemies do come after you, there's usually an easy way to avoid them. Spiders will grab you only if you're directly under them, and you're given ample time to escape its clutches. The projectiles from these ground spike enemies fly up first, meaning a spin dash will completely clear all damage. The blue goop, well, I was going to say it's completely fair because you're usually given ample time to notice a pattern, but there's at least one section where you careen straight into some of it with no warning, so that's not exactly true. Still, most of the level is fantastic precisely because it cuts down on the bullshit you'd usually see, even in Emerald Hill Zone with these stupid monkeys. Yes, there is the infamous section with the crush blocks, but I'm willing to get past that because you can bypass it entirely with a well-placed jump. Chemical Plant is also where Classic Sonic finally wooed me over in the soundtrack department. Don't take this the wrong way, I enjoy compositions ranging from Starlight to Green Hill, but I wouldn't call them instant classics in the same way I enjoy something like Chemical Plant. I'm very bad at explaining music, so I don't know what to say other than, this feels like a faster paced beat than anything in Sonic 1. Maybe that's because almost every song can be considered an upgraded version of a previous song. Compare Spring Yard Zone to Casino Night real quick. They both feel slower paced in comparison to other Sonic songs, but Casino Night has a few more instruments strung together at once, and it just sounds better. I know that's bad, but again, I'm not a music guy at all. I go by what my ear finds pleasing. Similarly, if you compare Labyrinth to Mystic Cave, you can notice a similar instrument being used in a less obvious way. You hear that twangy effect in both songs? I always felt like Labyrinth shoved that note in your face all the time, while Mystic Cave uses it with a softer emphasis on the rest of the song. One final comparison my colleague Shay May pointed out to me was between the special stages, and I think it's my favorite comparison. The special stages in Sonic 1, as he put it, sound like a lullaby, and I couldn't agree more. Don't think I need to explain why a lullaby is antithetical to Sonic's very being. Special stages in Sonic 2 have a much faster beat, and the song even has a rev up not unlike what you'd hear in a racing game. Not my favorite song in the world or anything, but it's a clear step up from what was present in Sonic 1. Frantic, fast-paced, and kinetic. That's not to say the entirety of Sonic 2's soundtrack is a step up, mind you. Hilltop is fine enough, but it's perhaps even more obnoxious with some of its instrument choices than Labyrinth. Chaseface put it best when he said it sounded like a fly buzzing around your ear. Overall, though, I think most of the songs follow a consistently faster-paced melody, and the slower-paced at least place the correct focus on the more pleasing instruments. This is a pretty consistent trend with Sonic going forward. Aquatic Ruin retains this frantic melody even though it's technically a water level, something I would usually associate with slower-paced music. This particular segment of the song always resonated with me. I'm a huge fan of Aquatic Ruin Zone in general. If you recall from my previous video, I absolutely hate how Sonic controls underwater, and that's part of the reason I hated Labyrinth so much. However, what I didn't spend as much time talking about is the other reason I hate Labyrinth: the level design. You're forced to waddle around underwater no matter how good you are at the level, and the zone consists of a bunch of smaller rooms with mundane platforming challenges, obvious switches to activate, obnoxious stage hazards. It's not particularly striking. Aquatic Ruin has underwater segments where Sonic controls just as awkwardly as before, but the zone is a substantial improvement for a few reasons. Firstly, the underwater segments are not nearly as painful as they were in Labyrinth. It's like the level design of Emerald Hill, but underwater. Long, straight lines, slopes, and enemies. You just need to make sure you get enough air and adjust to the awkward controls. Secondly, if you don't want to be underwater, you never need to be there. Simply take the upper path, maintain that pathway, and you'll never get a drop on you. It encourages replayability by giving you the option to avoid more annoying portions of the level, but still leaves the option open for you to accidentally fall into the water as a punishment. I'm a big fan of this punishment in particular because it isn't as brutal as an instant death. All the game does is take away your speed, which can feel just as brutal in the moment. By adding a water-free top path, Aquatic Ruin Zone gets around the problematic portions of Labyrinth, simultaneously setting up a unique skill-based risk-reward system. I know everyone under the sun has talked about this before, but you can't really talk about anything in classic Sonic and Sound original. All three of these zones are fantastic right up until the end where the bosses come in. A surprising amount of people asked for my opinions on the Sonic 1 boss encounters, and I suppose it is weird that I glossed over them. I did so because, well, I don't have a lot to say about them. Green Hill was beyond easy, Marble was beyond easy, Spring Yard was beyond easy. I can't say I struggled with a single boss fight in Sonic 1, and almost all of them ended in 5 seconds, outside of the final boss, which is similarly easy but takes a lot longer to finish. Ironically, I think Labyrinth had a much cooler boss in that you don't actually fight Eggman, you just finish the level after a particularly strict platforming challenge. I vastly prefer this approach over a boss I can down in 5 seconds. Sonic 2 continues this tradition, for the most part. Emerald Hill is actually easier than the Green Hill boss, Chemical Plant is about as easy as Marble's boss, Aquatic Ruin is similarly easy, but you get the fun of waiting for the arrows to fly to the other totem pole. It's not what I would describe as fun. I could go over all the bosses. I could have done so in the Sonic 1 video, but as you can see, I don't really have anything to say other than meh. The Casino Night Boss is an exception to the rule. You have to play around with Sonic's incline physics the time jumps into Eggman's cockpit while avoiding the flippers so you don't get caught underneath Eggman's machine where he drops bombs and activates his taser. It's not the most difficult boss fight in the world, but I appreciate that there's at least some skill involved in that it utilizes Sonic's unique physics. I expected to have more examples of good boss fights, but I really don't like the rest of them. Are we going to talk about the final boss now? Why not, I guess. The final zone of Sonic 1 wasn't really very climactic or exciting or difficult, just a waiting game to hit Eggman, and the most danger you come across is being crushed by the pistons. It's notable that in the final zone, Sonic has 0 rings and can't obtain any more. I posit this was to make the final boss much harder than the rest of the game, since the developers likely knew the ring system was easy to abuse. Unfortunately, the only damaging attack Eggman has is a row of electric balls that are almost never a threat. Sonic 2's Death Egg Zone does the same thing. Sonic is stripped of all his rings and must go toe-to-toe with Eggman. This is the only boss in Classic Sonic thus far that I would consider frustrating by a huge margin. I'm fine with heightening the challenge, and I think Mecha Sonic is a sufficient challenge when you're first fighting him. If you're careful, you won't get as many hits in and the fight will take longer, meaning you'll be much more likely to take a hit. Once you become more familiar with him, you can get more shots in and end the fight faster. That's a good boss philosophy consistent with Sonic. The problem with the Death Egg Zone is that right after Mecha Sonic, you're put up against the Death Egg Robot, a boss that does use Sonic's jumping physics in an interesting way, but is far too punishing for its own good. If you so much as make one bad jump, you're toast. And perhaps that's the way it should be. Where in other games you have life insurance for more difficult fights, that's stripped away from Sonic in this instance, which makes it all the more frustrating to make a simple mistake. Again, I understand why it's done. If Sonic had rings, the fight would be a cakewalk. Taking those rings away, however, leaves absolutely 0 margin for error, especially bad in the original release, which still sported limited continues. Game over here, and you have the entire game to play through again. In the mobile port, it's much more realistic to learn his attack pattern and beat him no problem, but I still don't enjoy my time with the Death Egg Zone very much. The Death Egg Robot arms aren't always easy to get a read on, and they forever expose and hide his weak points in a way that isn't too apparent. If you aren't willing to risk a jump, you can wait until he lowers his cockpit to damage him, which is likely when you're supposed to get a hit in on him in the first place. Messing up once gets you put back before Mecha Sonic, forcing you to repeat Mecha Sonic over and over and over again, just so you can get back to the real final boss. Outside of the difficulty, the Death Egg Robot isn't even a great boss. He has 2 attacks. He can try landing on you or shooting his arms at you. The pattern goes like this every single time. Walks up to you, stops, flies up and then back down, shoots both of his arms off at you, flies up and down again, walks, rinse, repeat. You can take your time on this boss and only strike when you're meant to, and you'll be done with him in a couple minutes. I do admit, it's nice to down him faster than you ever have before, and that's one of Sonic 2's strong suits and why I replay it so often. I just think as an initial challenge, it's far too steep. The rest of the bosses are unremarkable, so I guess if I can give the Death Egg Robot one thing, he's forever carved into the minds of children and adults alike for being one of the first truly challenging Sonic boss fights. If we're already talking out of order and about challenge, look no further than the trash fire that is Metropolis Zone. I at least think the Death Egg Robot has redeeming qualities, even if I personally don't enjoy it as a final boss. Metropolis has absolutely nothing going for it. I'm sure the idea here was to make a big challenge for the climactic final zone. It even has 3 acts. Think back to my Sonic 1 video. What was one of my biggest problems in regards to difficulty? Enemy placement. Metropolis is deceptive in where it places enemies alongside stage obstacles in order to ensure that evasion is practically impossible. There's an infamous enemy in this zone called a Slicer, a robot praying mantis that flings a set of blades at you in an arc. They throw the blades directly in front of them, and the hitbox of the blades is so large that any attack you do from the front will fail spectacularly. This wouldn't be a huge problem in and of itself, since in a vacuum you have enough time to dodge the arc. Problem: you're either going to be running too fast to react, or more egregiously, the bumpers and other stage obstacles will launch you straight into a Slicer placed at the edge of a cliff. Clearly, this kind of difficulty design is unfair, and it feels like such a huge spike because there's nothing of this magnitude in the rest of the game. There are isolated moments of frustration where you bump into a drill bot or a seahorse projectile, but I find it's an exception to the rule, as it was in Sonic 1. These moments are in the game to disrupt your flow, and it doesn't always work, but I'm willing to forgive moments like this in levels that have design as speed-friendly as Emerald Hill, Chemical Plant, or Aquatic Ruin. Metropolis has nothing going for it other than its intense difficulty. There are multi-tiered pathways for sure, but I feel that without the speed to accompany said pathways, there's almost no point in having the zone be so non-linear. I read a fascinating article in Gamasutra recently with Christian Whitehead, one of the lead designers for the mobile ports and the newly released Sonic Mania. He explained that Sonic level design has one all-important element: slopes. An idea I've talked about before is how you can use Sonic's speed and physics to jump off of slopes or inclines and reach other pathways. Whitehead posits that Sonic is at his best when levels have so many different paths to choose from and are speedrunner friendly. Metropolis has more than one pathway, but there's rarely any way to interact with each. There are huge walls in between, and not enough moments where each path comes to a bottleneck. Even in a bottleneck, you'll only ever fall down. You'll rarely ever get a chance to maneuver your way back up. There's no point in learning Metropolis Zone other than trying, in vain, to avoid the poorly placed stage hazards. No matter how many times I knew these starfish are going to shoot their needles, no matter how many times I see it, I can't prepare myself for it. Maybe that's because the needles are so damn hard to see. Maybe it's because stopping your momentum on the gears is hard to judge. Maybe because I'm so afraid of falling down and needing to move away from the screen so that the gear can respawn at the bottom of this gigantic vertical shaft. In fact, I think Metropolis is even more disappointing when you factor in that even the slower stages of Sonic 2 are far better designed. Casino Night Zone has a lot more platforming and pinball sections, but the bottlenecks and slopes allow you to bounce between pathways, while also focusing on the pinball tables with the slot machines to gather tons of rings. Trying to use a spring or flipper to land where you want is tricky, but once you're there, it's super satisfying. It doesn't matter that there aren't crazy loops or long stretches of speed. You can play around with Sonic in a unique way that none of the other stages attempt. Visually, it screams Sonic the Hedgehog, starting a trend that other Sonic games would follow even up to the most recent games. Hilltop and Mystic Cave, similarly, are great ways to show that slower-paced platforming-focused zones have their place in Sonic the Hedgehog when done right. My chief problem with Marble Zone was the focus on weighting-based platforming challenges, added to the linear design overall. Hilltop is largely linear, but with many more secrets, a few extra pathways, and almost no weighting-based challenges to be seen. The moving platforms always move downwards, so you can usually jump or spin dash off and land where you're supposed to much faster. There's lava, but no challenges that involve pushing a block and waiting to clear the gap. Instead, there are enemies to kill, so you can use them as platforms to navigate the lava, a much faster and more organic solution than forcing the player to wait. Similarly, Mystic Cave is much more focused on platforming and lever pulling, but there are secrets and pathways up the wazoo. It feels as though Sonic is plopped into a maze, constantly switching pathways, finding secrets, but it's a maze that constantly pushes Sonic forward rather than getting him lost. No matter which path you're on, the way forward is always clear. You might just find a few extras or checkpoint posts as a distraction. There's a fix in the mobile ports for Mystic Cave that removes a spike pit that was very easy to run straight into and was impossible to escape from. So it was essentially a prolonged fuck you as opposed to a bottomless pit. In the mobile port, they removed the spikes and turned this pit into your access point for a secret remastered zone that was cut from the original game. Hidden Palace. First off, I want to commend the dedication of Taxman and Stealth to completely recreate a long-lost zone for a mobile port. It's outstanding, and a novel way to fix a problem lots of people complained about. Hidden Palace is outstanding in its size, and is visually design-wise a huge upgrade on Labyrinth. You can mostly avoid the water, and when you are in the water, the sections only come in chunks to slow you down a bit. Again, as punishment. As a result, however, there aren't any air bubbles. You're expected to clear these water segments as fast as you can to avoid drowning, and I kinda prefer that approach to scrounging for air bubbles in what I see as a massive time waster. There are some cute Dinobots and bats, a unique boss battle that is fine enough, I suppose. Kinda finicky, but I like the idea. You get the picture. I think Hidden Palace is great. What I want to talk about more is what this could potentially mean for a Sonic Mania 2 or other 2D Sonic game. Taxman and Stealth put Hidden Palace Zone in as an homage to a long-lost zone, as well as a novel way to fix a problem with the original game. This is hardly their attempt to add a next-level twist on the idea of looking for secrets, yet I can't shake this feeling that stages only accessible via secret entrances would be killer. Think about how Sonic's levels are often designed, at least the good ones. Large, non-linear, and secret-heavy. Imagine if you took the top pathway, found a well-hidden secret path into a completely different zone normally inaccessible on the main progression path. That would be dope. It doesn't have to be super huge or anything. In fact, it might be best if it was only one act like Hidden Palace. It's just the idea of finding a secret new zone somewhere. I know in this day and age, data miners would absolutely ruin secrets like this, but they already ruined every secret in Mania. I would be willing to avoid social media entirely if I knew there were some big secrets in Mania too, just saying. It could also potentially solve a problem with heavy exploration in new Sonic games. There's less of an incentive in this day and age to explore for rings or extra lives because of the save system. It's still there, and I love accumulating lives and rings just for the hell of it. It's just that the incentive to rack up a ton of lives isn't as strong as the days where there were limited continues. Hidden zones would solve this problem in its entirety, with a tangible reward for going out of your way to explore. Of course, there are other reasons to explore, like for shields, but we won't go into that because those aren't really introduced until Sonic 3. Wing Fortress is similar to Hidden Palace in that it's only one act, with a preamble in the form of Sky Chase. Wing Fortress is a fun lead up to the Death Egg with some difficult platforming. I can't say I'm a huge fan of straight platforming in my Sonic games, but the way it's handled here is inoffensive, and I like the sections on top of the fortress with a bunch of ring boxes and hidden areas. Difficulty is also much better handled here than it is in Metropolis, with a focus on tight platforming and almost no instances of horrible enemy placement. Questions like, can I clear this difficult jump, pop up more than, will there be an enemy waiting to greet me? Sky Chase, though... Thematically, it's a fun way to get Sonic where he needs to go. It establishes that Tails is a biplane pilot. Gameplay-wise, it's sorta just waiting around, dodging enemies, and occasionally staring at the sky for a bit. I will admit, flying down in front of Wing Fortress, watching as it slowly crawls through the clouds, is impressive. It sets up Eggman's huge fortress as an intimidating threat to be paid off when you visit the fortress. I wish it was visited much sooner than it actually is, because Sky Chase's biggest problem is that it lasts far too long. I would be fine with it if you dealt with a few enemies and then jumped onto Wing Fortress. However, you instead fight a bunch of enemies in the beginning, watch Wing Fortress fly away, and then fight even more enemies. God forbid if you die, back to start. Now, imagine if Sky Chase was cut entirely and Wing Fortress was just a secret zone you could access. Suppose there was a cannon in Metropolis Zone that shot you high up into the sky and right into the Wing Fortress. Finishing either Metropolis or Wing Fortress would take you to the Death Egg Zone, but in this case you can explore to reach an entirely new and hidden zone. I realize that in this particular example it takes away from a level transition from Wing Fortress to the Death Egg Zone, but I'm sure it could be worked around to offer a unique transition either way. With the zones out of the way, I'd like to talk exclusively about the special stages. Oh, fuck, wait, Oil Ocean. I've never known what to say about Oil Ocean other than I don't care for the music, the seahorses are slightly annoying, the oil sections kind of play themselves, and yeah. There are pathways, and there's a bit of platforming, but I always forget about this zone until I'm there, and by the time the credits roll, I've already forgotten about it again. Might be indicative of something. Sorry if I've just dissed your favorite zone or something. I wouldn't say it's bad, there's just nothing going on here that I haven't seen done better elsewhere. Right, so the special stages. I really don't like the Sonic 1 special stages, specifically due to the lack of control I have over Sonic. Sonic 2 improves upon this with the half-pipe system. Your goal is to collect enough rings for each checkpoint along a half-pipe, which you have full control over. For that, I think it's already better than what Sonic 1 had to offer, though there are problems that pop up regarding the half-pipe design. Two main obstacles along your path during the half-pipes are rings and bombs, one of which you want to run into and the other you want to avoid. They generally follow a set pattern, which means memorization is made much easier than it could have been if the special stages were more complex. The camera also pans in the direction that rings will often appear, so I feel the special stages aren't completely unforgiving as others might insinuate. That said, I do think they're a bit too heavy on trial and error. Specifically, whenever there's an up or down movement in the half-pipe leading into a set of bombs you need to jump over, there's not enough warning until it happens. In the later special stages, you'll need a precise amount of rings to clear, and with every bomb hit, you lose more rings. Tripping over some instant spikes when you had enough rings to clear is infuriating, and so is reaching the end with only 1 or 2 rings missing. Entrances to special stages are handled universally better than they were in Sonic 1. 50 rings are still required, but instead of finishing an act, you simply pass a checkpoint post and jump into the sparkly ring. There are an abundance of these checkpoint posts in each zone, so much so that it's possible to get all 7 Chaos Emeralds by the end of Emerald Hill. I've actually done it, and it's super satisfying to have so many chances when Sonic 1 only gave you 10. I love that you need to seek out hidden checkpoint posts, almost as if the team were on the cusp of implementing special rings. Adding to the list of 1-ups on the original, there's actually a point to going after the emeralds in Sonic 2 other than to get the true ending. Upon collecting the 7 emeralds, you're given a message that reads, "Now Sonic can change into Super Sonic." Imagine, if you will, your knowledge of Sonic is non-existent. Super Sonic is a completely new concept to you, so you're left to think about this message. In the original, I posit the action was mapped to a jump because nobody would think to activate Super Sonic when they got 50 rings. It's a great way to show people that he exists, but I vastly prefer the Sonic 3 method where you need to tap the button twice, a feature that was added in the Sonic 2 mobile port. Super Sonic is essentially a god mode with heightened speed, jump height, constant invincibility, and a repetitive music track. Rings are gradually drained the longer you stay in this form, which is a fine way to counterbalance the overpowered aspects of Super Sonic. You can make zones like Oil Ocean and Metropolis fly by in a heartbeat, and while I acknowledge that's a band-aid solution, I still use Super Sonic to bypass some of the more frustrating design elements. He's a fantastic reward for learning and memorizing the special stages, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Certainly beats collecting the emeralds to unlock a true ending. Everything about Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a step up above the original, almost to a fault. Faster stages, more non-linear design, more secrets, giving purpose to the special stages, making them easier to play, easier to access. I think the most consistent problem with Sonic 2 is one that you'll either have to take with the good or abandon entirely: the difficulty design. Enemies are placed to halt your momentum, and I notice it happening at a much higher frequency in Sonic 2 because there's a heightened emphasis on speed in comparison to Sonic 1. Up to you whether or not this stuff is a major or minor issue, and I think that's alright. Nowadays I'd expect better, and it's a little worrying that Sonic Mania still has issues like this in abundance. In both cases though, I'm more than willing to take the good with the bad to play around in some expertly crafted stages that use Sonic to his fullest potential. Metropolis is sort of the glaring exception to that statement, and even then I would take the 1 slip-up in Metropolis over the 3 slip-ups in Sonic 1, no matter how frustrating these damn slicers are. Sonic 2 much more fully realizes Sonic's potential, and I still get the urge to replay it every now and again. Not the greatest game in the world, not even really the greatest Sonic game I've ever played, I just enjoy it for what it does right. At the very least, Sonic 2 is exactly what a sequel is supposed to be. Trims the fat, focuses on what it did best, and rolls with the punches. Next up, we'll be taking a look at what was supposed to be an enhanced port of Sonic 2, but spiraled off into an alternate universe version of Sonic 2 complete with time travel, funky music, and a whole new approach to level design. Join me next time with Sonic CD as we talk about how the stage design affects progression and difficulty, as well as which of the 2 games carry on the legacy of Sonic 1 the best. Until then, I'd appreciate it if you let me know what you thought. If you like this retrospective and want to support the channel for my videos like this one, you can donate to me on Patreon. The help is always appreciated, and I can't thank all my patrons enough for their support toward making YouTube a potential career. If you don't have the money for it, that's completely fine. Something more important you can do is please engage with the video. Comment below so we can get some discussion going. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, do all that fun stuff. I just want to talk to you guys. It's usually pretty fun when we stay civil. I hope you enjoyed the video. My name has been King K, and I certainly hope you have some well-deserved fun today.